few more people. I was saying a second ago, we didn't get panelist invites this time, which apparently is how it is now. News to me, but sorry for that confusion today. Those of you who are looking for your panelist invite on the committee.
I think I started it last month or the month before. It's been a while.
It was new to me this time, for sure. So I don't know. All right, we've got Doug to bring in, and then I'll get us started. The other thing was just a request I said in the email, but if you are able to have your video on, if your Wi-Fi situation allows that, please do. And if you don't have your video on, you know, and we still want to hear from you for sure. So, you know, just say sorry before you speak, and maybe just remind us who you are. And then also, if you have to leave early, don't be shy. Let me know. Just say, I'm sorry, I have to slip out. Just like you would if we were all in the same room. We'll just say, hey guys, I gotta go. Bye. You know, or put it in the chat at least, so that we know. Sometimes we don't realize, and then all of a sudden you go to say, oh, and they're not there anymore. So
okay, we also need to not use the chat at all. The county does not want us using the chat for anything.
Okay, never mind. Don't use the chat. Just raise your hand.
Thank you.
Fine. I can't wait till we're done with some of this, or the rules get a little more consistent. So that's my 2 cents. All right, so we're gonna get started. Sandy already has her hand up. Did you have something about what I just said?
No, I was just curious as to why I wasn't turning up on the screen. Maybe there's just too many people in attendance. Oh, there I am. Never mind.
Good.
Oh, sorry.
No, thank you. That's the point. We want to all be here together. So I appreciate it. All right. So this meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with the emergency ordinance number 20-A16, an emergency ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. The committee members who are electronically present at this meeting are, I'm going to make everyone say their names. I'm Allie Pesh. Sandy, you want to go next?
Sandy Houseman.
I see Mike.
Hi, Mike Kunkel.
Mark.
Mark McKenney.
Valerie.
Sorry, my everything froze on my end for a minute. I'm Valerie Long.
Yeah, Old Trail. Yeah, we forgot to say that part. Mid Springs. Costas.
Costas Alberos. We're about on 250.
Hi.
Hello.
Joe.
For Highlands.
Doug.
Doug Bates, Whitehall Road.
David.
David Mitchell, Fair Hill.
Sean.
Hi there, Sean Bird, off of St. George.
And Josh.
Josh Rector out in Whitehall.
Matt. Is this Matthew Slats, or are we?
You have the wrong Matt. This is Matt Hill. I don't know why.
Yeah, I actually wasn't expecting. So Carolyn, that's not the committee member, Matthew. Matt Slats actually can't be here tonight. So, and then okay. Brian.
Hi, Brian, Emerald Ridge.
Hey. Right, and then we also have Ann Malik and Jenny Moore, our liaisons, and mentioned county staff, Rachel Falkenstein, Tori Kanalopoulos, and Carolyn Schaefer. The persons responsible for receiving.
Michaela.
Oh, Michaela, sorry.
No worries. I would talk at some point. Thanks, Ellie. Michaela Cardi.
Michaela Cardi. Thank you. Okay, the committee members who are electronically present at this, I said that already, sorry. The persons responsible for receiving public comment are the Crozet Community Advisory Committee. The opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting are posted on the Albemarle County calendar. And that's all. Anne, Anne wanted a minute to make a public service announcement.
Yes. Public service announcement during this gasoline crisis all over the county yesterday, not just on 250. There were people parked in the travel lanes of the roadways waiting to get into a gas station. This cannot happen. If you see it happening, please call 911. We had some near misses yesterday with emergency vehicles. This is really not the way we can behave. So I do hope this doesn't go on too many more days, but it's going to take several days for the system to equilibrate and for our normal gasoline supplies to be here. And we just need to be grown-ups and behave better than we did yesterday and today. So I'm very glad we had this virtual opportunity so we don't have to all be driving anywhere tonight. And thank you all for please help your neighbors to understand this. This is a life or death issue for people if the ambulance can't get through and the fire engine can't get through. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anne.
And Michael Monaco is here too. He just popped in.
Yes, thanks. Hi, Michael. All right, so I think we have to approve the minutes. Did everybody get a chance to look at Valerie's minutes? Do we
move the minutes? They were excellent, Valerie. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, thanks, Joe. And Costas. Everybody can unmute and say if they approve the minutes now. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. I dropped my agenda when I was trying to get out of the sun. So I think we're ready to go to Rachel.
I'm going to kick us off, actually. So I'll just share my screen really quick. One moment. And can everyone see this? I'm making it full screen. So that should be visible now. Awesome. All right. Thanks, Allie. I'm Michaela Cardi. I'm a senior planner in the planning division of Albemarle County, and Rachel and Tori are here as well for tonight's presentation. We've been focused on transportation and conservation the past month, but we wanted to revisit land use and follow up on the board work session that was held in April, as well as talk about next steps for this project overall. The implementation chapter has been something folks have talked about from the beginning of this planning effort. So we will talk about engagement opportunities for that at the end of the meeting. So we'll start with a brief presentation and then open it up for questions. We can provide answers and then CAC discussion. So first, I'll start with land use updates based on the CAC feedback we heard in March, as well as the board feedback we heard at the work session in April. And we have a revised land use chapter that is on the county website. And I'm going to highlight a few of the key updates that are in that chapter. There aren't any substantial changes to the land use map, and there are no changes recommended to the middle density residential category. The last time we discussed it as a group, it was 6 to 12 units per acre and up to 18 with additional affordable housing or construction of small scale housing types. That was a potential increase in density. So there haven't been any changes to that. We have updated the narrative and recommendations in some places to clarify and provide additional context based on feedback we've heard. In this most recent draft, there's a section on housing choice and some narrative there to clarify and encourage creatively designed infill development, preserve the existing housing stock, and encourage housing that's priced within the affordable and workforce housing categories. There is an updated goal that aligns with this housing recommendation to provide housing accessible at a variety of income levels and for a variety of community members. There's a new recommendation about dark skies, since we heard that that was a priority. There's also a new recommendation about an engagement approach for determining the future use of the old Crozet school site. There's also, now that we have 3 draft chapters together, we're able to take a step back and look at all of the goals and recommendations collectively and ensure that they're consistent and not redundant across chapters. So that is something as staff we've been working to evaluate and just look at everything comprehensively. And then in the appendix section, we're continuing to update and refine the graphics and detail the different housing types that we've been talking about throughout this process. So this is a screenshot of a couple pages. The left side of the screen is the housing choice narrative. And then the right side of the screen is an example of 2 of the updated types of housing in the appendix. So there are some simple 3D models and some photos of existing examples in Crozet and other communities. And I'm going to transition past this part of the presentation over to Rachel.
Thank you, Michaela. I'm Rachel Falkenstein, Planning Manager, and now I'm going to talk a little bit about a proposed land use change. And this proposed change is not in the May 4th draft. It's a change to the land use map and some supporting recommendations that we're proposing. And before putting it in the draft, we wanted to bring it out to you all and hear your feedback and thoughts. And then we'll carry it forward and get additional feedback after this evening. So next slide, Michaela. So for a little bit of context and background as to why we're considering this change, many of you saw the board work session on the draft land use chapter. And they had some questions and comments specifically related to housing. The board had questions about whether the draft land use plan went far enough to support affordable housing as proposed, and whether there was the appropriate amount of development and growth potential within Crozet, and thinking of it as on a countywide basis, as Crozet is one of our development areas. There was some comment and questions also about density ranges and height ranges. Some board members thought we didn't go far enough there, but there wasn't clear consensus on that. And as Michaela said, we're not proposing to recommend any changes to the middle density heights or the density ranges. We're proposing to keep those as they are. We also have some broader project themes we think this land use recommendation can help us incorporate and help kind of tie together. One is the importance of infrastructure, especially sidewalks within and near downtown. Second is the focus on downtown development and funneling growth toward that area. And then, as we all know, there are challenges associated with county initiated transportation projects, the cost of these projects, timeline that we're able to complete these projects when they're county initiated and we don't have a partner. So moving on to the next slide, I want to talk about a site near downtown where we're proposing a land use change. So the proposed site is south of downtown, and Michaela, could you run your cursor around where the area is? It's bounded by Tabor Street, Crozet Avenue, Dunvegan Lane, and High Street. It's kind of a block here. And this area consists of 7 parcels. It's about 15.8 acres. There are 7 existing dwellings on the property and several outbuildings as well. And the density currently with the current development patterns about 0.44 dwellings per acre, so just under half a unit per acre. And if you can move to the next slide, we'll show the existing zoning of the property. It's currently zoned R2, which is the green color on the map. The adjacent zoning is north and west downtown Crozet district. That's the purple zoning. And then the other adjacent properties are also zoned R2. If you move forward to the next slide, you can see the current land use on the property. It's yellow, it's the neighborhood density residential. And this is what the property is currently in the 2010 plan. It's also shown this right now in the draft land use plan that we've previously looked at. Adjacent land uses are, again, we have downtown north in the red color and west. So across Tabor and across Crozet Avenue, we have that higher intensity downtown land use. And then adjacent parcels to the south and to the east are neighborhood density residential. The green parcel across Crozet Avenue is the county-owned stormwater facility. This property is also within, or at least 5 of the 7 parcels, so the majority of it is within the historic district designation for Crozet. And the existing road network, as you all know, is lacking of sidewalks. These are 4 streets that we've heard about, or at least 3 of the streets, Tabor, High Street, and Crozet Avenue, that need sidewalks and additional infrastructure to accommodate bike and pedestrians downtown. Dunvegan, south of this property, is recommended for an extension over to Park Street to complete that connection. So if you move on to the next slide, I'll show the proposed change. So we're proposing a middle density residential designation for this property. So you can see on the left is what it is currently as neighborhood density. And then on the right, the proposed change would change that area over to the orange color, which is middle density. As you recall, and as Michaela mentioned, the middle density residential recommends a density of 6 to 12 units per acre with up to 18 units with the middle density housing types. Those housing types are the bungalow courts, small and medium multiplexes, accessory units, single family cottages or tiny homes. And then if you can move forward, so this is more than just a land use change. So there are going to be some supporting recommendations we're proposing along with this. So as I mentioned, this is in a historic district and there are 5 or 6 contributing structures on the property to that historic district, some really well-kept historic homes. And so within the narrative of the land use chapter, we're recommending language about the protection of the existing historic homes. And then also on this property are some really wonderful large canopy trees, and we're recommending protection of those large canopy trees. So as a reminder, this change is a land use change and the zoning stays R2 residential. So if anyone wanted to develop this property or portions of this property, they would have to go through a rezoning process. And there would be a legislative review process where staff would review any proposed development here against the master plan. So staff would look to these recommendations about preserving the trees and preserving the historic structures and make sure any plan of development would incorporate those. And we'd actually go as far as recommending a certified arborist develop a plan as to how those trees could be protected. Moving on to the next slide, there would also be some supporting recommendations within the transportation chapter. So this image shows the recommended transportation facilities along those 4 adjacent streets. So on all 4 of them, we have missing sidewalks. There's a small segment of sidewalk existing on Tabor, but the rest of the streets don't have any sidewalks along their frontage. So we would recommend or expect that any future development of this properties would provide or partner with the county in providing infrastructure on all 4 segments of the street, or if it's a portion of the property developing any segment that is touching any of those streets. And this would include providing ample right-of-way for any street widening projects that would be needed, sidewalks. On Crozet Avenue, you can see the blue, that's a bike lane recommended on that segment of Crozet Avenue, so there might be additional right-of-way that would be needed for that. And then lastly, that Dunvegan connection, we would need right-of-way for that, and we would look to any future developer to partner in providing right-of-way and the future street connection. One last transportation recommendation that we would include, if you can go to the next slide, Michaela, would also be to look at the new street connection that Dunvegan is making with Park Road, and recommending a corridor design project to identify a street design for that segment of street all the way from between Crozet Avenue all the way east to Eastern Avenue, to figure out a design to safely accommodate bicycle and pedestrian traffic along that corridor. And if you can go to the next slide, Michaela, this map kind of highlights that connection. You can see when Dunvegan is connected, that will be a really important parallel road network to kind of Hilltop and Park Road, that Park Ridge Drive that are connecting to Crozet north of here. With Crozet Park kind of at the center of this street, we know with the proposed development in Crozet Park, that area will continue to be a focal point of activity within Crozet. So really enhancing bike pedestrian safety and connectivity along the street, we think will be really important. So we're making a recommendation that a corridor design be done to determine the best way to accommodate bicyclists and pedestrians along that street, whether it be sidewalks and bike lanes or a shared use path or some other type of facility. And so next slide, Michaela. So rationale for the proposed recommendation, again, the board feedback, wanting to see more opportunities for affordable housing within Crozet. We have heard previous CAC feedback about middle density. We know the majority of CAC members didn't support the new land use, but we did have some comments about a desire to see more areas of middle density applied within Crozet. And then some members have shared a desire to see higher densities concentrated within the center of Crozet. Another rationale would be what I mentioned before, partnering with a future developer that can help support the completion of these transportation improvements. So if and when portions of this site develop, we'd have a lot easier time partnering with the developer to get those projects done. An example of this is what you're seeing within downtown. We're partnering with the developer of downtown to get the street network called for in the master plan, and also a plaza, a public plaza within downtown. So those projects can tend to happen quicker, and funding is more likely when we have a partner. Next slide. A little bit of planning rationale for this change. Infill development within walkable locations where you don't have to drive everywhere. You're close to downtown, walkable to downtown is beneficial because that's where the infrastructure is concentrated, and that's where the destinations are for people. So infill development in these locations are helpful to downtown as well. You recall we did a market study looking at what is the retail market for downtown, and they found really there's currently a small retail market. They said about 40,000 square feet of retail could be accommodated downtown. Additional households will help that, will help downtown businesses and help downtown become more of a commercial hub. And then kind of the rationale on the flip side of not doing this change, if we don't provide opportunity for higher densities near downtown, we're more likely to see by right development. And with by right development, we're not likely to see the revenues to support some of these high cost transportation improvements. And secondly, a transition. This is a planning concept where you want to transition from high intensity down to low intensity and kind of step down. Right now you have a high intensity with the downtown land use right next to a low intensity residential. Putting this middle density here kind of steps us down to the lower intensity land uses. So to summarize, this change is more than just a land use change. It's a set of recommendations. Land use change to middle density on that property off of Tabor. supported by some narrative to support the historic context of the property, support those large canopy trees, the transportation recommendations, and the expectation that any developer would partner with the county in providing those transportation improvements, and the recommendation to do the corridor design for the Park Road corridor. Park Road corridor. So we'll pause here to hear your feedback, and we have 2 questions for you to consider. The first is, does the set of recommendations appropriately balance the community and board's feedback relating to infrastructure and housing choice? And then secondly, do you have any additional feedback on this set of recommendations?
All right, thanks, Rachel and Michaela. I saw Sandy's hand first, so I think I'll call on her.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with this property. And I want to make sure my math is right. You're saying that this is approximately 16 acres and that you could do 12 units per acre. Is that right? Or are you saying 18, or it could either one?
It would depend on the types of housing. So the middle density residential land use would allow 6 to 12 conventional, any types of housing. And then to go up to 18, provide additional affordable units or those middle density housing types that are identified.
All right. Well, so to me, the most conservative estimate would be to go with that 12, which is sort of between the 6 and the 18, in which case we're talking about 192 units on that site. Is that right?
Yes.
That's a lot of new traffic to put into an area that does not have enough infrastructure right now to support the existing traffic. I mean, all of the development that's going on in the vicinity of Crozet Park and beyond is using park, right? I mean, this just seems crazy to me. And I don't know what the likelihood is that this would be developed anytime soon, but would all 7 homeowners on that property have to sell? Is that the way it would work?
It could happen a variety of different ways. It could happen piecemeal, or it could be all 7 property owners would sell and there'd be 1 developer.
But if it happens piecemeal, then we don't get the benefit of the sidewalks and other things the county is counting on developers to pay for. Is that right?
We could get portions of sidewalks. We see that happen in development areas quite a bit, where we get the frontage of the site provides the right of way and sidewalks, and it happes segment by segment.
Have the homeowners on this property been informed that you're talking about this now?
We have not spoken with the homeowners.
Does anybody think that would be a good idea?
We'd be happy to reach out to them. This is our kind of first public rollout of this.
Yeah, I mean, Anne, I think this should be a matter of course, and you should bring this up with the county board that anytime residents are going to be affected by a possible change, they should be notified that this is under discussion. Now, Rachel, your supposition is that we're doing step down. In other words, we're going from the intensely residential downtown to something a little less, and then we move out to the single family. But the reality is, across the street from and around this property, it's all either the church, which is, you know, a goodly amount of land, or single family homes. There's no density immediately adjacent to this property, right?
Those are the current uses. I'll remind everyone, this is a long range plan, so it's 20 years out. So even if current property owners don't have a desire or plan to do anything different with this property, that's okay. There's not a requirement that the property owners want to develop or want to sell. It's if and when the property does develop, this is the vision for it. And I will also share that some of the properties across the street, across Crozet Avenue, those ones that are currently zoned for downtown Crozet, we're starting to see some of those transition to commercial uses and developing or expanding. So we might start to see this happen on some of the properties adjacent to the site.
Which properties are we talking about now? Are these, you talking about the veterinary office or what?
There's a veterinary office there that's expanding.
Yeah, I mean, on paper that might look like density, but to me, looking at it with my eyes, it doesn't look dense. It looks pretty country. So I'm not really sure that this high density residential development that you're considering fits with the existing neighborhood. And at Ally's suggestion, I did attend last night's planning commission meeting. I'm very discouraged. I don't think the county is listening to us. I don't think we're going to have any say in the end about this density, density, density. And if anyone would like to contact me, I really think Crozet should be thinking more seriously about seceding, because I just don't see how this works out for us. It's very depressing. Anyway, on we go.
Thanks, Sandy. I know Joe was next. You want to go ahead, Joe?
Yeah, thanks, Ally. I actually think this is a well thought out and a good compromise, a good proposal here to accommodate what the board and the planning commission have asked for in a way that I think checks a lot of boxes. I very much appreciate the thought you guys put into the tree canopies and the historic homes, the things that we would have been concerned about, and the opportunities to partner with private developers to get some of these infrastructure things that we need done. You know, as Rachel pointed out here, we say we want walkability, we say we want bikeability. Well, you got to put people near downtown. You got to put people near the stuff they're going to walk to and bike to. And this area is a few blocks from the park, and it's a few blocks from the new downtown. So to my mind, it's a perfect place for increased density here. And the thing that wasn't stated expressly in Rachel's presentation, I know that Michaela and Rachel didn't expressly say this, but the planning commission and the board made very clear that they want more density and more people in Crozet. They're going to get it in the plan one way or another. And so the point, as Rachel and Michaela, they're sort of pushing back and saying, well, we don't want higher densities in that middle density residential. So we don't want to put more people necessarily in the other parts of middle density residential. This is a potential way to avoid having those higher densities. You don't want to have higher middle density residential at Old Dominion. You don't want to have it over at the Whitegate Farm. You don't want to have 24 units per acre at Whitegate Farm. This is an opportunity, I think, to accommodate some of those concerns without forcing people further away from downtown, which we've all said is a big problem. This puts some of that density right where we want people to be in the downtown core. That's it.
Thanks, Joe. I think that maybe David was next, and I also wanted to ask David, as a member of the development community, how you reacted to the suggestion that this might invite more affordable units to Crozet, considering all of the stipulations that this is coming with, are in the form of recommendations, which I'm not even clear how well those would actually become more than recommendations, but actually stipulations. But anyway, David, wondering about that affordable part.
Sure. So first of all, I agree with Joe. I mean, this is a good spot. You're right. If it's not walkable and not bikeable, what are we talking about? And you're not going to have, like Rachel said, you're not going to have a viable downtown with businesses that depend on people coming to them if they are not near that downtown. I mean, the downtown mall in Charlottesville is a perfect example. It didn't really take off until parts of Charlottesville got much more populated within walking or biking distance of the mall. And I think this is just a similar concept. So it's in the right spot. Whether or not a single developer or multiple developers over time can assemble those tracts of land is to be determined. They're at least marginally large enough to make sense. I mean, you got to have a certain acreage to make these projects work in order to have the space, to have the flexibility to do the design, to get the densities, especially with what Ally's asked me about the tree canopy and preserving the house and that kind of thing. I mean, there are always going to be in this community requirements to preserve things like that. they do conflict, frankly, with density, because if you say don't touch this and don't touch that and don't move this, you are I mean, physics is physics. Things can't live in two things can't live in one space. It is difficult, but we have engineers and architects and designers that can work around these things and make that happen. I think. I mean, I think you're right. It's going to be tough to get to 18, but I think something below that is achievable with affordability. Frankly, affordability is a relative term in this community. And that is not something that we are going to change. It is a limited amount of land with a lot of people that want to live here. And we're also a university town to a certain extent. And there are a lot of things that just push you toward higher cost of living across the board, but you can mitigate it, and you can try to have some semblance of affordability for the people in this community and the people that want to move into this community. So I don't know, Allie, if I answered your questions on that. There's nothing easy about what we do, but we're not rocket scientists either. It just takes some creativity and some good engineers and architects, and a developer willing to, frankly, take a risk.
Thanks. I think Anne was next, but a lot of people have their hand up. So do you want to go next, Anne, or should we circle back?
Just a quick question. The yellow on the map, that the current zoning is already 3 to 6. Is that correct? Whoever, Rachel or Michaela?
The current land use is 3 to 6. The current zoning is R2, which is up to 2.
Okay. So we already have the 3 to 6 as what if a rezoning came in without this change, it would be put onto 6 times 16 acres or whatever, which is more than, pushing 100 units already under the current zoning. I just wanted to make sure my math was right. And the other thing that I think would be helpful going forward is when we're talking about these street improvements, it would be helpful to know what the smallest curb to curb would be. And maybe David can help us, because we had to get special dispensation from VDOT to have 40-foot curb and gutter instead of 60. And when you have a road right now that's 12 feet wide, even going to 40 to put in your sidewalks and bike lanes will make drastic changes to those neighborhoods, the houses. And the only other sad thing I will add is that none of us knew when Jarman's Gap was built that we were going to be forbidden from replanting the shade trees along that road. The Lions Club actually bought 1,000 trees and were ready to plant them. And VDOT said, no, you can't put any of those trees back that were there. I mean, it looked just like the trees in your pictures because of all the underground utilities that were there. So it makes me want to ask a lot of questions to make sure that we understand probably more than we understand right now, but I'll be quiet. Thank you very much.
Did you want me to answer your question?
Oh.
So sure. Specific to road design, and we know your travails there with the Barnes Lumber property and VDOT's wants versus what the community might want. And it is always a conflict. Valerie might actually be able to help with this one. I know she's been having some issues with private roads. When you do private roads, and you can do private roads and alleys and driveways within a development that really do help with setbacks and what utilities you can put in the road. I mean, VDOT and the county and everybody's kind of decided we don't want to any longer run water and sewer lines and utilities underneath the asphalt, because if we've got to fix it, it costs money and it shows up traffic and yada, yada, yada. Well, I mean, that's great. But, if you want density, those are things you're going to have to accept. So out in the suburbs, in big green fields, say three or 4 units per acre type of average, maybe a little less, you can finagle that with keeping things out of the right of way. But with something like we're talking here, that's just not possible. And you know, you're in a small town, you ought to expect that. I mean, that's just kind of the deal. So you'd have to go with private roads to get those densities. And you do get some, you don't get a lot of alleviation on the widths and the turn radiuses and all that stuff. But the main thing you get is you can put your utilities in the right of ways or in the road bed. Now, this is not a problem anymore. It used to be. Those roadways would need to be taken care of and money put aside over the time by HOAs to make sure that in 20, 30 years when it needed to be repaved, there was money in the kitty to repave it. That's just a function of good management of an HOA. And, you know, you pay your dues and your fees so that can be taken care of when the time comes. But yes, I mean, you know, roads are an issue and utilities within the roads are an issue. And frankly, private roads and driveways are the way to go to if you were to do a project in this particular area. That's what I would look toward.
Okay, I think Michael's next.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I think broadly agreed with what Joe was saying. This seems like a pretty smart and smooth change, and especially thinking on the long term, a sustainable community has got to be one that's walkable, and that means having more people living closer together and closer to businesses. And this allows for that in a greater depth than the current land use does. So to me, it makes a lot of sense. And like I said, on the 20-year scale, just seems like a no-brainer. So.
Not sure, but either Mark or Sean. Mark, you want to go?
Sure, I'll go. Thanks, Allie. Hey, great presentation from the county. You know, so I live in West Hall, and I've talked to Ann many times about the Eastern Ave project and how I view it, the importance of getting that in. So Dunvegan Lane, connecting that to Park Road, I think is vital. I think, like Joe said, this is a very happy medium. You know, we need to strike that balance. We're not going to make everybody happy, but where this unincorporated town is going with the downtown square, the walkability, the bike lanes, the sidewalks. Till I had kids, I never valued a concrete slab as much as I do now. My concern with Dunvegan Lane, with expanding this, which is I think is the right thing to do. If you've ever looked at on Crozet Ave at Dunvegan, and I'm sure when VDOT starts someday doing all this work, there's a good chunk of probably homeowner property that's going to have to get cut into, shrub tree clearing, because that is a very bad blind spot coming if you come out of Dunvegan Lane onto Crozet Ave. So I think we need to recognize that, and there's going to be, again, homeowner impact there. Just at the 2019 VDOT report, 7,900 vehicles a day on average go between 250 and 3 Notch Road on Crozet Ave. So that intersection is going to become a very very important and highly traveled intersection. With the park expansion, we need this. I wish it didn't take 20 years to get all of this, but that's the nature of the beast. But we need these sidewalks and bike lanes, because from east of the park into West Hall, Glenbrook, Foothill Crossings, Westlake, you are walking through the woods, or you're allowing your kids to walk through the woods, and a lot of us would love to see these sidewalks put in. Just as an example, again, Park Road 2019 report, 1,700 vehicles a day are on that road from 2 years ago, just on Park Road. That's going to, obviously has increased, it's going to continue to increase. The last thing I'd like to add is I know I moved into Crozet in 2018. I'm new to all this, the CCAC. But I think we need to kind of come a little more together versus instead of the perception of us versus the county. I know there's a lot of frustration and emotion, but becoming an incorporated town, succeeding from the county is not the right answer. One, it's a very grueling, lengthy process. And if it ever got approved, everything's already going to be approved and we're stuck with it now as an incorporated town. So I would just like to ask that we talk as a collective group, trying to solve problems and not just cut our ties with the county and look at incorporating. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Mark. Sean.
Okay. I was just doing a little research on these properties on the county's GIS website. And it's a little deceiving because there are 7 parcels, but 5 of them are owned by the same entity. And 14 out of the 17 acres are owned by the same entity. Now, I don't know who R&H Partners LLC out of Batesville is. Maybe you do, someone out there does, but they seem to be the major. What's that?
Yeah, I was going to bring this up also.
Okay. So they seem to be like the major player here in this situation, holding most of that land. So I don't know if there has been sort of a discussion with them or if they brought it to the county or vice versa, but it seems like, that could maybe spur the development since most of this land is held in the hands of one entity. And I don't know if they hold all these properties, those very nice big houses, I don't know are they being rented? Are they owned by those individuals? So, maybe a little more digging into the exact nature of those lots would help us sort of understand the potential for them.
Thanks, Sean. I also was curious when you said you hadn't contacted the property owners, if that also meant that they hadn't contacted you. Just because when we're talking about a 20-year plan and it's like, oh, this is big picture. It's a little different when it actually might be the property owner's short-term plan.
We have had no conversations with the property owner. I know of no plans for them to develop this property. I don't know who lives in the houses. So we have not spoken with any property owners.
I think Valerie was next.
Thanks, Allie. I'm sorry, I have to keep turning my video off. I keep having my whole screen freeze and then I miss things. And as one trying to take minutes, it's a little stressful. So forgive me if I look like I'm not answering or if I turn my video off. I was going to raise the same thing Sean did. I too noticed that the same entity owns the majority of the parcels. I actually see that as a positive, that it's, an opportunity to work with a single landowner who could, spread out the, units and make this work in a way that achieves the goals of the text that Rachel was describing in terms of providing affordable housing and maintaining the mature trees and so forth. I think it would be challenging from a development perspective, but the easiest way is to have a single landowner to do it rather than trying to coordinate individual landowners. And also, no landowner has to develop their property. It would be completely at their option. So whether it's that owner or the other 2 owners would have no obligation to do anything. It would provide an opportunity if they wanted to, but no obligation. But I think particularly knowing the challenges of trying to build the type of infrastructure that's envisioned with the sidewalks and a connector road and a study to figure out how to make that connection to park, that's going to require some coordination, and having a single owner can only make that easier. So I agree with all the other comments from Joe and Mark in particular. I appreciate the fresh perspective, Mark, that you bring to this. I share your comment about never appreciating sidewalks until I too had young kids and was trying to push a stroller with babies. And so thank you.
Thanks. I guess I just wanted to go back to the number of property owners. I see that when developing this is your goal, then it is helpful that it's mostly one property owner. I have to empathize with the other two property owners who would probably have their quality of life substantially changed should they want to try to resist selling at that point. So, you know, I guess that's what happens when you live in downtown Crozet, but man, if they're watching this meeting, they're probably jaw to the floor. So I see you. Did anybody else have reactions who hasn't gotten a chance to speak? Or have a you know, maybe just a second to anybody's comment, just so we get a kind of feel for what, if anybody else, unless you're just seriously neutral on it, that's fine too. But I assume that people have some reaction. This is a pretty big proposal at this stage in our revision process. So I expect we would have had a lot to say about this if we had seen it a few months ago. So I don't want to miss the chance tonight. Brian? Oh, Ann, sorry.
I'm kind of on the fence on this one. On the one hand, you know, Sandy's got it right. And we're looking at an awful lot of units in order to protect the canopy trees and put in the sidewalks and all that. They're going to have to maximize the number of units per acre. On the other hand, it does provide housing that is walkable to downtown. It's not in an undeveloped area that is on the outskirts of Crozet, which we keep getting challenged to do. And I think somebody made the point earlier that, you know, we are going to be pressured by the county to increase density. We always have been, we always will be. And this might be a better location than most, even though it's in a lot of ways not ideal.
Thanks, Brian. Before I turn it over to you, Ann, I was wondering to, I guess, Joe's point that Brian was recalling, do you think with your colleagues on the board, you would be able to argue, you know, we don't want middle density at Old Dominion, or, you know, the density proposed at Whitegate on those projects, which are still, you know, deferred right now, or whatever status they're in. You would be able to say, we're trying to get that density over here, and actually try to steer the development this way, or would we just end up with it in all three places?
My guess, with no information, would be that the second answer is probably where it would go.
Yeah.
And I would, just because I don't think it's really, I mean, the board has to take, each application by law has to take what's in front of us at the time. But that puts us at a terrible disadvantage unless we've really carefully looked at the big picture first, which we as a county haven't done very well for many, many decades. So we're trying harder to do that now. So I don't have a perfect answer for you. I think that the market may make a difference and make something closer in be much more appealing than something further out.
Yeah.
I mean, just like environmental protection back in the 60s, everybody laughed at us and said, oh, the market will take care of it. And we never got anywhere protesting until the market started to turn around, and then the market did take care of it. So my question for Dave or somebody would be, if this application came in and there were 90 or 100 units or something like that, or even more, how many really affordable units would there be? 15. And so that's sort of a trade-off. I guess I'm trying to figure out value. Are we getting enough of what the goal is for this location when we have absolutely no legal ability right now to protect those historic houses or those trees? It doesn't really matter what we put in the master plan. Look at what's happened in neighborhoods all around. So many people on this committee and other places have been asking for these rules for years. We just aren't there. So I want people to go into this with your eyes open, saying, yes, we would like to do this, but if a developer comes along and says, oh, I'm not going to do that, what is the likelihood that our trees and our historic homes will be protected except by the people who own them today? So I don't have a decent answer for any of your questions, just more questions to pile on. Sorry.
Thanks. Joe?
I'll let David, I suspect David might be responding to what Ann said.
Sure.
David's
Yeah. I can just tell you, I mean, if the buy right now is 3 to 6 acres, and you own those 7 parcels or 6 of those 7 parcels together or whatever it is, those buildings are in the way. I mean, I'd take them down. I mean, the one's beautiful. I modeled parts of my house on that house because it's gorgeous, but it's just not, it's in the way. I mean, when you talk about a buy right project and you put it all together, it goes, the old buildings go down. That's just the way it is. It doesn't make sense to buy it and redevelop it if you don't. And you can do that if it's buy right. And Ann's right. It's a carrot and a stick with developers. We all know the drill on here. You say, hey, we'll let you get this much more density and therefore you can make more money. And the landowner that sells it to you can sell it to you at a higher price because it's worth more. All of those things are true. The trade-off is when you get the rezoning that you would have to go get under this scenario, you're going to have to give up some things that are going to cost you money. If a project, if you've got to save that house, then maybe it costs you a couple of units, which cost you money. If you've got to save those trees, that's land that you can't build on, which costs you money. Now, what that means is that money that it costs you has to be paid for by the parts of the project you actually build. I mean, it's socialism. It's taxation. We're going to tax the portion you can use, you can't use, and you're going to have to use that money to pay for the other stuff. I mean, you got a project cost you $100. Let's say the rent would be $1,000 a month for a 10 unit project, but you've got to rent, because of the rezoning, you've got to rent 2 of those units for $500 a month. Well, guess what? That $1,000 just went into the other 8 units, and now they're paying $1,200 or whatever the math comes out to. That's how affordable housing regulations work. The people who can pay for it pay more to subsidize the people, the affordable units. And the same thing applies when you try to save a house or save a tree. Something's got to pay for the house and the tree you're saving. But the hope is, or if it's crafted properly and the market works it out, if you write the regulations properly, there's enough of a fair trade-off that somebody looks at it and says, yeah, I'm going to build that and I'm going to save the tree. I'm going to save the house. And I think I can get a little bit more for selling the house or renting the apartment or whatever to pay for that loss. Because that's what it is. When you don't use the land, it's a loss. So, you need to have the trade-off. And the trade-off in this case is more density. That's really more density, frankly, is the only thing that a community, a county, a regulatory body can give a landowner as an enticement. They can't, I mean, you're not going to give me money, I don't think, right? You're not
Well,
going
I mean, it's not, we could imagine that there could be other incentives for
I would
development
love to know
besides
what
that.
they are. I mean, spit
But
them out.
I also just wanted to say that it is only by right R2 right now, right, Rachel?
Well,
Not 6.
whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, like, you know, the incentivizing of the development of that parcel right now is even lower.
This is not, I mean, it's trade-off, it's horse trading, it's whatever you want to call it, but it is what it is. And it is the way that both sides can get some of what they want, because no side is going to get everything they want. And if you think that that's the case, you're deluding yourself and you're wasting your time.
I think we're all here because we love
Crozet,
and we want Crozet to be like the best version of Crozet it can be, and that's why we're all here. So no one's arguing. No one's, you know, we have a common goal on this committee, and I don't think that anyone would dispute that. So, Joe, you were next.
Thanks, Sally. I'll make it real quick because I know Matt and the participants has been waiting a long time. And also, well, I was going to say Valerie was in there, but now looks like she had moved back. To go back to briefly, Allie's point, the question about, you know, does this mean we're going to end up with middle density at Old Dominion, middle density at Whitegate, and middle density here? And Ann says probably, and I think that's probably right. My concern is, again, this sort of compromise idea. If we don't add this density here, you know, to appease what the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors have made pretty clear in their comments, at least from my listening to them, I think there's going to be a lot of push for higher densities and probably other housing types. Right now, I believe, Rachel, that middle density residential is limited to small and medium multiplex. The comments that were made yesterday at the Planning Commission, there was a lot of comments about apartments, which sounds like larger scale multiplex, which I think a lot of people in Crozet and on this committee are probably generally against, like the View or the Summit. So my concern is if we don't do this here, there's going to be pressure to go up to 12 to 18, 18 to 24, and maybe large multiplexes. And there's only 2 places in Crozet that can go. That's Old Dominion and Whitegate. And so my concern is you're going to end up with that there's going to be pressure to put those densities and those housing types potentially in those 2 places, which are further away from downtown, further away, not walkable, not bikeable, and just puts even more pressure on traffic and those kind of things. So that's my only comment.
Okay, I just to push back a little bit, I don't think that people are proposing multiplexes at Old Dominion or Whitegate.
No, I'm not saying they're proposing that now. I'm saying, like, based on the Planning Commission's comments about the need for density, what the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors kept talking about, more density, more people, more. Yesterday, the Planning Commission talked about options. People need options, renting options. That kept coming up.
And I also just want to defend myself. I am not opposed to apartment buildings in Crozet. The opposition to the View was its location and its design.
Yeah,
and it's mismatched with the surrounding area. But I mean, an apartment building downtown would be ideal. So that was also, like, I was bummed that the View got built there instead of downtown. And I don't know, I certainly didn't oppose the Summit at all. So I mean, I don't think that they're affordable. So again, I use it as evidence that density does not equal affordability. And I just kind of want to say, like, I bristled at that part of Rachel and Michaela's talk because they proposed this like this was going to be answering the board's request for more affordability in Crozet, and I just don't see how this, especially on such an expensive parcel, is going to lead to affordable units. But that being said, that doesn't mean I don't think that this parcel should be developed, and I applaud the efforts to get the infrastructure built with private partnership, because I do think that, we have a lot of ground to make up there. And yeah, we're going to need developers to put in some of these sidewalks and road extensions. So I'm not saying I even oppose the change. I'm a little frustrated with its presentation tonight with no warning, and I just am sympathizing with the people who live there. This is like so last minute. I thought we were done talking about land use changes. So that's my comment right now. I want to hear from Jenny, just since you haven't gotten to say anything, and I want to get Sandy and Mark and Matt helped.
Thanks, Allie. I just wanted to add this to Joe's point about apartments, and Rachel can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when staff are talking about the missing middle, they're trying to encourage a certain housing type. And so that's what you see in the text, but I don't think it's to say you can't do apartments, which is the point I was trying to make at Planning Commission last night. And I think I probably got sidetracked, but I don't think it's saying apartments can't happen. And because 18, if it's up to 12 and then 18 with the affordability piece on top, can absolutely be apartments. So can less than 18. So I'm not trying to discourage or encourage. I'm just putting it out there that this category doesn't say there can't be apartments. I think simply it tries to encourage other types of things to happen, to create things so we don't only have apartments or only have single family detached. So I wanted to put that out there because I don't want people to have something happen one day on one of these projects and then be surprised that it may turn out to be apartments. And Rachel can say if that's not correct, but that's my understanding. Is I think what we want to do is make the opportunity for a variety of things, but it is not to say that it can't be that at 18. Thanks.
I'll agree with that. The way it's drafted is really kind of discouraging larger multifamily units. But I think the term multiplex is multiple units in one building. But it's paired with design guidance so that these are smaller buildings that are scaled appropriately with single family homes and can exist on a street and feel like they belong there and not feel out of place. So it's a matter of semantics, but we've really tried to build in more form guidance than we've previously had, so that we can think about what scales are appropriate and how this fits in the surrounding environment.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm thinking also of some of the stuff that was in the downtown, whatever it was, just, thing we talked about that was actually trying to incentivize turning something like the Child's House into apartments. But that wouldn't really be a part of the middle densities designation specifically. Mark or Sandy, I think was next.
Yeah, a quick question. What's happening with the Barnes lumber site? Is there not the potential there to do a good deal of density and still not displace neighbors like the folks who live around the property we're talking about? I mean, I think there's that parking lot next to Piedmont Place that just is begging for a pretty tall apartment building. Any answers, anybody?
Sure. They got the owner developer of that property has the first phase has been rezoned, and he is in the process of working through site development planning. The first step is getting his road plans approved. As part of his rezoning, he has to make the road connection between Hilltop and Library Avenue and kind of build out a new street network for the area.
Mm-hmm.
Where he is right now.
Yeah, I mean, what's so difficult for us now is not having that big picture, not knowing what's going to develop and when. It would be helpful if we had a better idea of that. I would suggest that we not take a vote tonight on this question and that anybody who's speaking about it or has opinions at least visit the site before we go any further. And I also want to say, when I raised the question of secession, I realized that would be very difficult. But on the other hand, I think philosophically as a community, we really need to push back because we're getting a great deal of population out here with great demands for services, including our schools. And I don't think we're getting commensurate support from the county in terms of paying for some of this infrastructure. I think the philosophy is, oh, let's develop and then the developers will pay for it. But ultimately, I think we have to strike a balance, and this is our place to say that.
Thanks, Sandy. Mark?
Thanks. So, and this may be a question more for you. The approach to affordable housing is obviously needed. I mean, 3 years after I moved here, I'm priced out of Crozet. I think many of us are. But has anyone also thought about, we talk about the view, bringing more affordable housing in, and what about public transportation to go along with that? How are lower income folks who may have one vehicle for a family supposed to get to 29 hydraulic Charlottesville City from here? And I think that's and I don't know what maybe some long-term county planning is for public transportation out here, but I think that's something that needs to be discussed about as we look at the affordable housing topic.
I think there's general understanding at all levels that the two go hand in hand, and that without the transportation alternatives to owning a car, that the lower income housing will not work. Now, we've had some experiments. We have the one commuter run that has already started and can easily be ramped up to have many more seats per day through Jaunt. We also have the over the mountain bus, which is beginning to run within the next 6 months. That will be going from Stanton to the city, multiple runs a day and back in the afternoon, which will have a stop at Patterson Mill at a park and ride lot that's being constructed there. So those two things are definite. And there is definitely a awareness, I think, that we have to keep expanding that. That discussion comes up every time there is a rezoning now, especially when people are saying, we want to support this because it will provide more affordable units. But if there is no transit that is reasonably available, then it puts the whole thing in shadow. So I think you're not alone in understanding that that is a really important link. And we do have at least those two options at the moment.
Thanks. Yeah, that's part of a different discussion than this specific land use change for sure, but always important to remember. So, Anne, did you have more to say? And I want to get Doug and Matt.
I have forgotten what my question was, so never mind. Never mind.
Okay. We'll go to Doug and circle back.
Thanks, Ally. I just wanted to give folks an update about the plaza and the Barnes lumber property and that whole exercise that's underway. It has been really a pretty massive exercise to bring the county, Newtown Associates, and DCI, which is the local 501c3 that's really trying to find ways to bring elements to the plaza that will enhance it, like we did the library. So these three entities throw in VDOT, and you've got a mix of effort to move this project forward in coordination with the square. And we hope to make a presentation to the community, seek community's further input, but really be able to come forward with a significant presentation sometime in the next 6 to 8 weeks. DCI has decided that we would like to make this a community exercise, so we'll host the meeting, and the county staff, Megan, is working with us to do that so that we can have the chat function up and the other things that we really need, because we want to we actually want to hear from the folks that live here. But that will occur sometime in the next 6 weeks. It is still a projection that we might get construction started sometime late in the fall. But frankly, I have been a participant in some of these technical meetings. It is, I don't see how stuff gets developed. That's okay. Frankly, that's okay. I'm okay with that. But in this case, we hope to have the plaza. There's just one last hurdle on wetlands and a stream buffer and things like that that need to be worked through. And so we hope in the next couple of weeks we have an announcement out there.
Cool. Thanks, Doug. Would love to see it. All right, should we hear from Matt? Carolyn?
Thanks for the opportunity. First thing, if y'all don't know who R&H are, I really encourage you to get to know Crozet better. Allie dropped a hint. You can rewatch the meeting. You might be able to figure out who they are. But if you don't know who R&H are, I encourage you to take a local native Crozetian out to dinner for the next 12 months until you learn the community that you're representing. It's really disheartening that you all don't know who R&H are. They're two of the most important people in our town's history. So please learn your neighbors, learn your community. It's a terrible property to develop, and here's why. You guys allowed the view and you allowed Pleasant Green. There's no sidewalks on Blue Ridge, Macomb, or Carter Street. You failed on that one. What makes you think that 100 homes, let's say it's going to be 100 homes, you're going to put a couple sidewalks in? How are they getting to Crozet Park? You're addressing getting to downtown. You're not addressing any additional park space. Where are the kids going to play basketball? Where are they going to skateboard? Did you address that? No, it's another failure of the county. You guys don't think logically about what the community actually needs. You think about shoving.
Meeting is tentatively scheduled for June 9th at 7 p.m. Opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting will be posted at a later date in accordance with Emergency Ordinance number 20-A16 and open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. Yeah, always on that. I love the awesome new Albemarle County calendar. So I hope you guys are all getting used to that. Finding the materials and the agenda and links there. So I will continue sending it out. And again, if you aren't getting my emails, either as committee members or community members, please let me know. And my email is on the county website. If you just search Crozet CAC. All right, thanks guys. Have a good evening. See you in June.